Hi everyone, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about draft and how I view draft, as well as how I break it down and analyze the little nitty gritty things or a little bit of my perspective about how teams should draft and how draft in general should work, right? So, of course, when we look at draft itself, there's like blue, red side, and then most generic is, of course, first pick and last pick, but of course, I think to me this is very vague, too simple. I think in general, draft is going to be very based around how you want to build your team composition to fit certain themes that is good into enemy team composition's theme, right? So of course you can put it into perspective like certain theme may be like a very similar all-in type of team composition, and then of course a good counter to that would be something that is like full disengage, full kite back. Of course this is going to be that's very generic explanation, right? And when we look more into draft itself, right, we're thinking a little bit about what B1, R1, R2, which these are going to be like your first picks. And in general, people find that you know you should pick like OP champions, for example. But I think or they'll say like, oh, we should need to pick like flex picks or whatever is blindable, right? And this is like I think a very weird misconception, because these are all very vague, right? Because OP champions in a lot of times are not actually OP, right? They are just good because enemy teams don't know how to play against it, right? And don't know how to set up for it, don't know how to draft around it, and don't know how to play against it in the game itself. So generally, what is considered the most like flexible and blindable would be champions that can fit and slot themselves into multiple themes without being too obvious or too limiting in the rest of the draft, right? And I can give you a very good example is that um, previously, I think near the start of Wild Rift, as well as when we got further into the season, is that people were first picking, they do a lot of B1 a lot of B1 cameo, right? And we saw, or at least through my experience, especially in the Super Summer Cup, you see a lot of experienced teams with a bit more flexibility in the draft. They realize like, okay, B1 cameo is not actually that good, right? Because first of all, Camille has very specific themes that she has to fit inside of in order for her to be useful. Right, we can talk about split push Camille, or like the hard engage version with the Galio, with the wombo combo, but that's all she does, right? She doesn't offer anything else. Like you pick her with a siege composition, a poke composition, or like with a composition that has disengage and kite back. She is completely utterly useless. You're going to end the game and she's going to have like 4,000 damage. So, and she's even building like Triforce, right? So there are a lot of situations where you can create to make first pick Camille bad, right? Because the enemy team, even though right she is a flex pick, right, she can go mid or top, sorry, jungle or top lane, and she does fit multiple teams. Enemy teams that are practiced in understanding how to draft against her and what specific themes counter her, will understand that, okay, they are sort of showing face up, right? Because unless they want like this one champion to be literally useless in their team composition, they are going to have to go into one of these two specific themes. And that allows you to, draft in such a manner where, okay, they pick Camille rather than having to mask what I want, right? Which is why champions like Gragas is so strong, so contested in the draft, is because it's so flexible, right? It can be drafted into 4 different roles, it can be played as an engage, disengage, and it fits many situations, right? Which Camille is what people thought it was, right? But it definitely isn't, because there are there are lane counters, right? And Camille jungle in itself does not scale well compared to the side lane or top lane variant, right? And we can think about it in a more specific manner, like if we do an example, right? So if for example, considering that let's just say Gragas is banned, right? Because most teams will first pick Gragas, or even if Gregors was open, let's just say we don't pick it here, right? We can look at the possibility of doing Fiora, right? 1-2. And then you might be thinking, like, why are we doing Fiora 1-2? And I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but in Southeast Asia, Fiora jungle, Fiora mid is actually very common, right? Because this champion in Wild Rift is completely fucking broken. Her first skill is on way too short of a cooldown. Her parry is like sub 10 seconds cooldown level 1, which is completely insane. So we think about Fiora as not just a split pusher in Wild Rift. She is the single best skirmishing champion in the whole game. And so what does she do, right? If Camille is sent into side lane, she outright wins, you outscale, right? And then you're put in a scenario where, okay, if they pick Fiora, I don't want to send Camille into the side lane because we are in a situation where we have to play on a timer. We have to play on a timer because the Fiora is just going to outscale us, right? And let's just put Camille in the jungle anyway. Let's just play for some 5v5s, play for some team fights, right? But then you're in a situation where you are first pick, right? Enemy team has already shut down one of the themes that you can possibly opt into, and now they have 4 other picks. They can pick something completely ambiguous here, right? They could easily take something like Galio to steal Galio from the Camille, which is so-called like the OP combo, although I think Camille Galio is completely overrated. Or they could take something like, a Jenna or Braum R2 here, which fits very well into a secondary team that, is a direct counter to the engaged style that Camille might want to operate if he's not going into the side lane, right? So that's how we can think about, looking from a certain champion being first pick, right? We understand what this champion can do, and if the enemy team pivots, how punishing is it for them, right? Because there's always the possibility that, okay, they realize that we can't team fight them because they're drafting full disengage, they're playing 4-1 split push. We're not going to win side lane, this Camille is going to be useless the whole game. Let's opt into something that can win their 4-1, right? And it's just that they're just going to sacrifice the Camille and make it be completely useless in the game. So this is why I think a lot of teams decide to drop this pick, being first picked here. And of course, this is going to vary for a lot of different scenarios, right? Because certain teams are, I guess you can say, scary, quote unquote scary. I mean, if we're looking at pure draft, the idea of a team being better or worse at certain champions shouldn't affect your decision. But of course, that's going to be different in many different scenarios, because in an actual tournament, nobody is going to play perfect. Nobody is going to play and nobody's going to play like real gods, so we always have to take the accountability that maybe you lose a game to this guy's Camille, even though you outdrafted him, and then you're just like, okay, let's just ban it, right? So yeah. Now we can take a look at this is one team versus Evos. I think this is the second game of the finals in the Super Summer Cup, and think about a lot of the things that I spoke about earlier. So first we're going to talk about the B1 and R1, R2, right? So we do see the B1 being Lee Sin here. I think a lot of the focus, especially within this one team versus Evos matchup, was placed around the jungle, right? Because Valdez in this tournament, which is the Evo jungler, has been on like an absolute tear, right? He's destroying everyone with Lee Sin and Olaf, like these two specific champions. So one team, they decide, okay, let's just ban the Olaf, we'll pick the Lee Sin, and Lee Sin isn't a bad first pick. Later in the series, we do see Evo's first pick Lee Sin themselves, and it's not that, like, Lee Sin isn't a bad first pick, it's just that it's not good, right? Because Lee is a champion that, he's not really gonna do anything well, right? The only good thing that Lee does in Wild Rift is that he is a skirmish god, right? He's the best champion, maybe outside of Fiora at skirmishing. He doesn't exactly have, an easy way to get into the backline against team compositions that like Sinner team compositions that want to go into the backline. He doesn't have the best disengage, right? Outside of just only his kick. So him as a champion, right? He's like jack of all trades, master of none. Decent first pick, and it fits the style of like blindable, I guess flexible, and in some cases can fit multiple roles. I know there are areas where people have played him solo lane, but he does fit multiple themes, right? And then we do see Evos do Varus Brom, which is a little bit awkward, a little bit odd, but it is super. I wouldn't say like super ambiguous. It does mask the fact of like what they're doing R3, R4, R5, because first is that Varus can be played, lethality on hit, and the second thing is that he is really really good in team fights as well as in a scenario where you're just playing poke and wave clear. So there is Varus in general is just a very safe champion to pick blind in a draft situation. Of course, there are ways that you can punish this Varus 1-2, right? But obviously, if you are being Evos and looking at all the previous one team games, you understand that they prefer this certain style. Varus is pretty decent into that style, and it helps your draft be ambiguous R1, R2, right? And I think Braum is just like, in general, just a pretty safe champion to go with in lane. And also because they want to hide whatever their R3, R4 is going to be like, right? And we do see Gragas, Corki. That's why I think it's a little bit awkward. Evos did not pick up Gragas here, but I think it's probably because they don't flex it mid support, right? We have not seen G4 play a lot of Gragas in the tournament, and their support has never played Gragas, I think, in the tournament, right? And we see Gragas Corki, which is also good flex picks, which does fit multiple themes, but we understand that okay, Lee Sin, Gragas, Corki, if we look at these three champions, we can rule out that they are not going to be playing a team composition that's going to be a hard engage, right? Likely is that they're looking to be scaling, hitting the mid game with certain item power spikes when the Gragas is super tanky. But we also don't know if it's going to go mid lane, going to be a full AP Gragas or like a full tank Gragas in the top wall jungle, right? Depending on where Lee Sin goes. And Corki is also a champion that can be flexed, mid AD, and certain scenarios can be played in maybe top lane if there's going to be a lane swap. So this first three I would say is completely winning for one team, right? Because they have so many options and they have a lot of leeway in how they want to draft. And I would say when you are winning because either your first three is a direct counter to the other two, right? Or your first three is giving you way too much leeway in the draft, right? You have so much freedom. They could easily pivot 4-5 here into basically any team composition that they wanted to, right? And we see a Renekton Fiora 3-4 from Evos. I think this is it is their sort of niche, right? They play their Fiora jungle, and I think Fiora jungle is really strong, like no cap. I think it's good, and what's awkward here is that they just want to last pick mid, which I guess is fine, right? Because the Corki is a flex pick here, it can be sent AD, but they are showing face up, right? When you pick Renekton Fiora with the Varus Braum, you understand that okay, they just going to play either a smoke, right? Either they just run at you, but in this case, they don't have any large amount of CC to back them up with because it is a Braum, it's not like Leona, Rakan or something. So if they smoke, they're just gonna die. If they play like Sinners, they're gonna lose the game. If they lose like 2 fights in the game, so likely is that they will have to play through side lanes, especially with Renekton Fiora as one of the strongest 2v2 duos in the whole game. So one team, they look at this and they're like, okay, they want to play through sides. It's fine. We'll just send Gragas top. He'll be a holder. Just gonna be quote unquote weak side, right? And then we'll just pick a free scaling bot lane that will be able to allow us to play this poke composition with the disengage. So if you look from this point on, right, the five champions vs this 4, I think it's super obvious that there's absolutely no way that Evos can win this game, right? Barring the fact that top lane completely explodes, because first of all, I think it's going to be extremely hard for a Varus Braum lane to abuse Ezreal Janna. That's the very first thing, right? The second thing here is that there is no mid lane pick available, at least in Wild Rift, that allows you to abuse the Corki matchup or to accelerate either the Varus into a situation where he's going to hard carry the game, right? So you only have one win condition, which is going to be your Renekton Fiora split pushing for like 20 minutes and going to end the game by himself, right? And the thing is that you're going to be doing that against probably a full tank Gragas or like a pretty beefy Gragas, even if he goes AP, right, with Wrath of Ages. And that in itself is not going to be easy, right? Because you have absolutely no pressure on the map, even when you are going to be killing the Gragas, because your duo of Varus Braum can do absolutely nothing to Corki, Janna, and Ezreal, right? And if they defend your cross map when you make the play, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're going to be so lost on the map. So it's like basically when they draft themselves in this position, they are praying that one team plays bad. Because one team's team composition, you just outscale, right? Enemy team doesn't have enough tools for them to abuse you in the early game. And you have relevant tools to defend against their win condition. So, of course, EVOs, they double down into this. They go to Twisted Fate here, which I think it's probably the best pick that they could have in this situation because TF is good into most of the champions on one team. Right, your one stun is actually pretty strong here because they don't exactly have a real tank, right? And again, it is very good in fitting the side lane composition that they want to play. Again, it's just that they have to play on tempo throughout the whole game, right? They cannot miss a single beat. The moment they have bad recall timings around an objective, they are going to lose so much gold because they are unable to capitalize on the fact that they are outscaling us, right? So we have to keep making plays. If not, the Corki Ezreal is just going to just run it down mid, and we're going to lose. And of course, we see in this game, players don't play perfect, especially this early into a scene. And one team, they understand that enemy team composition needs to snowball. They need to snowball the Fiora. I mean the Renekton. Let's just lane swap, right? We lane swap. Early game, the Renekton can't do shit, right? And then we just wait until Corki Ezreal has like 2 items. We just group 5 man, run it down mid, and they can't do anything. And that was just like the story of the game, right? We see that one team lane swap, they get behind and go a little bit because of it, and then they decide to just play the waiting game. 2-3 items, Ezreal, Corki, waiting room, and once they hit those power spikes, every team fight was, completely, I wouldn't say one-sided, but it was super easy for them to win, right? Barring any like mechanical misplays. So yeah, that's overall how I think about drafting itself. Now this is a little bit extended review because I don't know. This is just my take on how the one team EVO's draft in this particular game looked like. I chose this game specifically because I think it fits the idea that picking certain themes in your team composition is very important, and identifying what are the win conditions of said themes are what allows you to draft and pivot properly, right? And this is what makes good drafts, right? And it's not, I won't say it's very in particular that one team or EVOs drafted bad here, right? It's just that both teams had an idea of the theme that they were going for before the game, and I would say that most of these drafts that we see in this game is pre-planned, right? There was no on the spot like, okay, let's just pivot in this direction, right? Because the moment that they Varus Braum R1 R2, you could tell that okay, this was planned, right? But it's just understanding how it could have been changed or where it could have been better, right? We see that the first 3 here, B1, B2, B3, is already way too strong for one team, and the moment that they log in Renekton, Fiora, R3, R4 is kind of almost doomed, right? Because then they would literally have to play perfect, or have one team play like monkeys for them to lose. yeah, so that's it for this little bit draft review here, talking a little bit of how I understand draft, and I might do a little another video about how I think about or how I dissect certain games and do analysis on um, the game itself, right? But for now, this is just gonna be it, right? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.